Welcome to Palestine Files. Hussam Bahrani here. In what seems like another victory for the Palestinians, the International Criminal Court has confirmed that it has full jurisdiction over Palestinian territories. What does this mean? It means that it paves the way for the ICC to continue its investigation of Israeli war crimes and occupied Palestinian territories. The move comes despite what the ICC calls unprecedented attacks and pressure by Tel Aviv and states and organizations that are allied with Israel. The next step is a trial. Despite intense lobbying efforts by Israel, the International Criminal Court has ruled that it does have the legal jurisdiction to rule on war crimes committed in the state of Palestine.
This is a baseless and outrageous decision. The court has no jurisdiction in this case.
In a 60-page document, the ICC noted that the state of Palestine is a party to the Rome Statute. This is the law that mandates the ICC. The document goes on to say that the ICC automatically has jurisdiction over any crime committed in Rome Statute parties and that there is no need for further separate assessments as to the statehood of Palestine.
وآن الأوان لأن يحاسب الاحتلال في كل المحافل الدولية على مجمل الجرائم التي ارتكبها بحق شعبنا الفلسطيني وأن يعاقب على هذه الأفعال في كل المنصات الدولية.
The ruling has dangerous implications for Israel as it raises the possibility for the ICC to issue global arrest warrants for top Israeli officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former army chief and opposition figure to the Israeli Premier Benny Gantz, in addition to former chiefs of staff and senior Israeli army officers. The story has made the rounds on social media, and here are just some of your comments, starting with Dominic Bushemi, who says Israel is a threat to the whole world, worse than COVID-19. And you want to check out COVID-1948 as well, my friend. Ian says an all too real and ongoing threat. Actually, a threat hardly does justice to living as targets of a thieving, murderous and destructive military machine given impunity by the international community, primarily directed at them. And yes, the truth says Israel is a strategic threat, not just to the Palestinians, but to the whole world, including the USA. Interesting point there by Yes to Truth. And Solomon McConnell says the oppression is suffocating and relentless. Silence is the worst thing at this moment. Intimidation is unacceptable. Moving to Kai, who says they will go down in their history as another blip. Times are different now. History is far better recorded and documented, and it will not be kind to them this time around, says Kai. Francis O'Hara says Pompeo threatening the ICC again. It is a time the rest of the world held the US and Israel to account. Britain, France and Germany should also reconsider their support for Israel. International law needs to be obeyed. Israel and the US have no respect for the law or human rights. Both of them he's alluding to. And neither one of them do they have respect to. A fair point there by Francis, his point of view, but many would agree with it. And finally, Carol Koshek says Zionist Nazi Israel is a gang of war criminal thugs who need to be prosecuted for crimes against humanity before the ICC. God will deliver justice upon the heads of evil Israel. So that was our social media segment, but it's now time to hear from the Palestinians themselves.
نحن كفلسطينيين نأمل أن تمضي محكمة الجنايات الدولية في إطار التحقيق من أجل فضح كشف الممارسات الإسرائيلية بحق أبناء شعبنا الفلسطيني، ولكن لدينا اعتقاد أن دولة الاحتلال الإسرائيلي دولة تعتبر نفسها فوق القانون الدولي والقانون الدولي الإنساني، وهناك بعض الدول التي تساعد إسرائيل في التمرد على القانون الدولي الإنساني. فبالتالي لا نعتقد بأن هذا التحقيق سيشق طريقه. ستقف إسرائيل وكل الدول الداعمة لها عقبة أمام المضي في طريق يعني تحقيق هذا التقرير وإنصاف حقوق شعبنا الفلسطيني.
نحن نظن كفلسطينيين أن هذا القانون لن يمر، وإسرائيل ستحاول قدر المستطاع أن تفشل هذا القرار، وإسرائيل تعتبر نفسها فوق القانون الدولي، وهناك دول داعمة مثل أمريكا لإسرائيل وستستخدم حق نقد الفيتو ضد هذا القرار. وإسرائيل يعني كما تعلم أن الكثير من القرارات التي خرجت ولكن لم يتم تنفيذها لمحاكمة إسرائيل جنائيا على جرائمها بحق شعبنا.
شك أنه قرار محكمة العدل الدولية والجنايات الدولية هو قرار يجب أن يطبق، ولكن إسرائيل التي تتخذ من نفسها أنها فوق الكل سوف تعارض هذا القرار وتقف ضده بكل، ولكن على الدبلوماسية الفلسطينية أن تقوم بدورها في إقرار هذا التقرير، تقرير الجنائية الدولية إن شاء الله. إسرائيل اليوم في ظل الوضع الأمني العالمي ما حد بيقدر يحاسبها، ولكن سوف تجد من يحاسبها إن شاء الله.
الاحتلال بيسعى انه يكون فوق القانون، لانه هو من البدايه اصلا مشيته غلط. اذا كان انت جيت لبلد وقلت لها انه هاي بلدي، طبيعي انه كل شيء تعمله بعد هيك حيكون غلط.
So, according to the ICC, and this is the gist of the argument, the case if you like, Israel has obstructed the Palestinian people's rights by expanding settlements, construction of the illegal so-called separation barrier, others will refer to it as the apartheid barrier, which is a wall that swallows Palestinian lands even further. The ICC also says that the occupation of the West Bank, Jerusalem, Al-Quds and the Jordan Valley obstructed the Palestinian people's rights. But that's not all. The ICC also cites Israel's shadow rulers in the occupied West Bank and Al-Quds as obstruction of justice too. These are shadow mayors, governors and heads of institutions that are there to fulfill the regime institutions once Israel annexes these areas. Okay, so what does the press say about all this? Our first guest for this episode is Ahlam Muhtasab, the Professor of Media Studies at California State University. Ms. Ahlam, thank you very much for joining us. If you can please break this down for us. The ICC moved to continue the investigation into Israeli war crimes despite pressure by Tel Aviv. How much of a victory is this for the Palestinians?
I think it's a small victory for the Palestinians. Because if we look at what happened, it was obvious that Fatou Bensouda from the ICC insisted on claiming the jurisdiction over the Palestinian territory. And she actually, in the process, dismissed all the pressure against her, not only from the United States and Israel, but also from countries like Germany, Australia, Brazil, and even law experts who actually kept on challenging her decision to investigate the war crimes. At the same time, though, we have to be careful about how much of a victory it is, because at the same time, she acknowledged that The Hague may not have the jurisdiction to deal with the Israel-Palestine situation. Hence, she asked for a ruling by 3 ICC judges to determine the scope of the court's territorial jurisdiction. But if we look at the whole issue in general, we would conclude that slowly there is a shift in terms of the world opinion about what is happening in Palestine and about the continuation of war crimes against Palestinians by Israel and the Israeli government and army. So from that perspective, we have hope. Although if we look at the U.S. context, we might not get the same sense of hope because, for example, just last week, the Congress actually passed the okay for more financial aid, or I'm calling it financial aid, more out of our tax money, more help for Israel. Although we are living in one of the worst financial crises in the history of the United States, we are still being asked to give charity to Israel in spite of all of that, in spite of the 35 million unemployed Americans.
Professor, the ICC noted that it was under it cited tremendous pressure by Israel and its allies. What does this say about Israel's disregard for international law, and what more can we expect from Tel Aviv?
The Israeli government back in December, when the ICC first announced that it would start actually the investigation into war crimes against Palestinians by Israel in 2014, at a request by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at that time, classified all deliberations about the ICC's start of the probe into alleged war crimes in the Palestinian occupied territories. And that's actually according to Haaretz and other Israeli newspapers and news outlets. And this is a very important thing to consider. I mean, Israel is a state that is built on secrecy and classification of information. But it's very interesting that even the deliberation and the preparedness of Israel has been classified as top secret since December. That's why it's very hard actually to know the type of pressure that has been placed on the ICC. However, we got some glimpses when, for example, last week, I think, actually 2 weeks ago, Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary Mike Pompeo, attacked the ICC and actually claimed that they have no jurisdiction over Palestinian territories because Palestine is not a state. Not only that, but he went further to threaten the ICC into taking certain measures against ICC. As I said, in addition to all of that, you have other countries like Germany, like Brazil, and even Australia and Canada actually rejecting the ICC intent to investigate Israel for potential war crimes.
Dr. Ihla Muhtasa, Professor of Media Studies and the Director of the Center for Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies at California State University. Thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid time has gotten the better of us. We're going to take a short break, but there's plenty more to come, so stay where you are. The ICC states that there is reason to believe Israeli war crimes have been committed, and the Israeli army has deliberately launched disproportionate and directed deliberate attacks in occupied territories. The Palestinian victims have expressed concern about further delays to the case, saying they are also worried about the so-called narrow scope of the investigation, which may exclude crimes that were committed since 2015 against Palestinian civilians. So far, the ICC has not stated anything about this, but the fear among Palestinians is that Tel Aviv and Washington will certainly use it to try and stall any pre-trial hearings, which is the next step in the process. The US Secretary of State has warned the ICC of consequences for its potential war crimes investigation of Israel. Mike Pompeo also says the US do not believe the Palestinians qualify as a sovereign state, warning the international court to end what he described as its illegitimate investigations. Palestinians say an ICC probe of Israeli war crimes should be extended to its settlement activity too.
Israeli colonial settlements are illegal under international law, and not only that, they tantamount to war crimes, and ignoring facts don't mean they don't exist.
Historian and journalist Brecht Yonkers is our second and final guest on this episode of Palestine Files. Mr. Yonkers, welcome. Now, do you expect the ICC to issue global arrest warrants for Israeli officials, or is that too far-fetched in your opinion?
I think that question basically addresses one of the doubtfulness of the usefulness of the ICC that I addressed before. That I don't think that the ICC is capable or even willing to really pursue de facto in actual actions the persecution of war criminals that are coming from certain established Western nations, whether it's the United States or Israel or several European countries. The ICC has shown itself to be more than willing and capable, of course, of pursuing and persecuting certain third world country politicians, especially in Africa, but has shown a remarkable unwillingness or incapability to really pursue more like really big scale imperialist war criminals in the West. So the question whether or not the ICC will most likely persecute Zionists from Israel in the near future, I would say most likely, unfortunately, not.
On that note, Mr. Yonkers, Palestinian victims who are worried about further delays and the narrow scope of the investigation, will there be more delays as Israel and US pressure mounts on the ICC?
The history of the Zionist conflict against Palestine and the Palestinian resistance has been a history of constant delays and constant international games being played while the Palestinian people die. So I don't think this is really a new subject. This is a colonization that started in 1948 and could have been resolved relatively quickly. However, due to the constant delays and the incapability of the international community, due to the fact that a lot of delaying maneuvers were put in their path by the Zionists, by the United States, by a lot of the West, nothing has really come of it, and which is now the reason, of course, why we're speaking about 70 years later, and we still see of course, Israel marching on even more and even more in the third, fourth generation of this conflict. So even when the ICC says that it's deciding to finally take its job seriously in this region, even if they are fully devoted to this idea, I'm afraid that there will be a massive amount of delays that will make sure that none of the Zionist war criminals will ever get tried, and none of the Palestinians will probably get justice from this organization specifically.
What about the annexation that Israel promised will take place by July? Can the ICC or perhaps other international organizations, institutions attempt to block this move by Tel Aviv?
It is a very difficult question indeed, because the ICC, of course, tries to specifically handle matters such as war crimes and crimes against humanity. And the annexation of the West Bank is a very broad subject that, of course, violates United Nations principles, but then again, that is nothing new. For Israel has violated and disregarded countless dozens of UN resolutions and other laws of international humanity, basically. So when Netanyahu says that he wants to move onward to the de facto and de jure, the official annexation of the West Bank, which is already for a major part occupied by illegal Zionist colonies, the question really remains, will the ICC do more than merely just complain about the fact that they oppose it, and will they actually stand up and do anything? Personally, call me pessimistic, but personally I don't have a lot of hope that the organization that hasn't really done anything in the past decades will suddenly decide to really help the Palestinian people. It will be up to the Palestinian people to help themselves in this regard, I'm afraid.
Right. Mr. Yonkers, the historian and journalist, thank you very much indeed for joining this episode of Palestine Files. Now, Raji al-Surani is the head of the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. He has slammed the US for undermining the International Criminal Court, saying Washington is protecting Israel because Tel Aviv is just flat out guilty.
First of all, we were absolutely in total shock with the statements of Secretary of State Pompeo against the ICC, prosecutor against the ICC institution and the court. He accused the ICC of politicizing the court, which is totally untrue. They try, US, Israel, and their friends, allies, to politicize the court. The court should be, and it is, independent, professional, credible, but things went wrong when Palestine jumped to the picture. Secretary of State Pompeo gave a statement against the ICC prosecutor and the court. We were shocked and overwhelmed when he accused ICC of being politicized and lack of independence. This is absolutely wrong and condemned by the overwhelming majority of jurists and observers across the globe. If the ICC pre-trial chamber rule out this, and hopefully by the end of the month or next month maximum, then the prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, will ask the court to look to the substantive crimes, and these are settlements, the Israeli illegal settlements, the offensive on Gaza 2014, pillage, the siege of Gaza. So these are real major issues. I mean, the court will look at and conclude about it. That's why US, Israel, and their friends are very critical and want to attack relentlessly the ICC and the prosecutor. Israel de facto annexed settlements and de facto annexed Jerusalem and de facto annexed Jordan Valley. These are areas under their full control and jurisdiction. They are looking for shifting this de facto annexation to de jure. This is not legal, this is illegal, this consists war crime, and Israel will be held accountable for that. More than that, even international community, I'm saying the entire European countries almost, and there was a clear-cut European position in this regard, and major states like UK, Germany, France, the EU issued statements and said that annexation would be illegal and it's against the international law and it's violation and consists war crime in international law.
It is not expected that Israel and the United States will adhere to the latest efforts by the ICC to prosecute Tel Aviv. Palestinian victims fear that even more time will have to pass before any major ruling is made by the International Criminal Court to give them some of the justice that they have been waiting for. That's it for this episode of Palestine Files, and see you next week.